almost all of them have been curtailed to a huge extent because of coronavirus, came to me and asked if I would pull 300 or so pictures that a selection team could look at and refine, down to a few that could be displayed. I see Leslie's with us today. Leslie was instrumental in putting that team together and that. So thank you, Leslie, for that. She is Vice President of CAMP Rehoboth. So the team was Steve Holt, Joyce Felton, and Carolyn Watson, who's a local photographer. So I pulled 300 pictures and we had them all together and they took a look at them. So there are many reasons why they chose these 30 to represent CAMP Rehoboth. Some of it's historical, some of it was just, a gut instinct that it felt good or it captured a moment in the lifetime of CAMP Rehoboth. For me, looking at all of this, it's than it is, and it's not a lesson at all. It is the conversation, but it's less a history than it is a stone skipping across the surface of a pond and touching down here and there to reveal a particular moment. So, there are reasons behind why the selection team made their choices. They tell a story, we hope, and in them are bits and pieces of CAMP Rehoboth over the years. You may have noticed recently that because we're not able to do a full show of all of this, one by one, the other, 200 and so pictures are being posted to various social media sites as we go through this. So you'll continue to see some of those other photographs on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as the year goes on. It is an amazing thing to be celebrating 30 years. So I think I can talk about these things, and you could probably all add a good bit of information about these and about a number of other camp events. If you give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen here. And are you able to see my screen yet? No, let's see here. Huh. Marge, can you see that?
Your screen is not coming up.
Huh.
So sometimes I've had the experience where, Marge, if you set the meeting up, you might need to go down to the bottom somewhere and say that others can share their screen.
I thought that's what I had set, but I will double check it.
Okay.
And make sure.
It blocked us from sharing screen. You've got to release that, at least for Murray.
You're seeing that it's blocked?
Yeah, when I hit share screen, it says host disabled, attendee screen sharing.
Okay,
So
now I have to find out where to go. I told you would be, thank you for being patient.
We practiced.
Hi, it's Kevin. If you right click on Murray's name, you'll be able to change him to either host or co-host.
Okay. If I right click on Murray.
In the participant list.
Yeah, it takes a village, but we're
more. Spotlight video, make co-host. That's what I want.
Yep, and then he'll be able to share.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for, see, everybody gets together and it all works out. Thank you.
Hey, are you able to see the screen yet? Marge?
Not yet.
Huh. Maybe I have to redo it again. Just a minute. There we go. We should have it here. Just 1 moment.
Yay.
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm going to go up here into a different view so we can get on with this. Okay, we should be good to go now. Thank you for helping us through this. I'm the museum's guinea pig, I guess. So we're in testing mode. All right. So actually, many of you have seen this picture because it was posted at some time, but the team wanted to use this, and I have to admit I'm kind of glad they did, because it's a photograph that I've had for a while. It was obviously taken from an old snapshot, and I have no idea who took the picture. It's important, I think, because this is from the first Sundance in 1988. And for those of you who remember your Camp Rehoboth history, it was, that was 2 years before Camp Rehoboth was founded. So we were in the 80s. AIDS was, devastating our community, and we wanted to do something to help. And so we had gathered our beach house friends together and had organized Sundance. At the time, we didn't know that we would still be doing it 33 years later, but it was important for us to do something, and so we got it off the ground. But I do think that it's important as well, because that early organizing to help for AIDS work in the community and around the country, as we got involved in things, gave us, I think, the confidence to go ahead and try to do something that would eventually lead to Camp Rehoboth. So this is sort of a building block, towards Camp Rehoboth, and it's continued to be a major source of support over the years. So I'm glad this photograph is included. There we go. We are, oops. There we go. Okay, this one is, well, it's the first year of Camp Rehoboth, but the site has always been important. And I want to tell you that in the end of 1990, Steve and I still lived in New York, but we were, like we had done throughout the 80s, we were here most of the summer. And that summer, as it came to a close at the end of the fall, as we walked up Baltimore Avenue for maybe the last time in the season, and I believe we were staying at the apartment behind the Blue Moon that summer instead of in the beach house we had normally been in. I looked back and I saw this property, and the entire property was for rent. And the thought flashed through my mind, that might be a good spot for something, and it feels like it's downtown, it's visible, something could happen there. And then as things went on, and neither one of us thought we were ever going to leave New York, but Joyce Felton came up and she started talking to us about some things she wanted us to do. And Steve said, well, Murray will never leave New York. But I said, I saw this property that I think something wonderful could be done with. So we came down here, we foolishly jumped in without even really knowing what we were doing. And, that first year we rented that entire property, which was not the wisest thing to do either. But, eventually it settled down and we got Camp Rehoboth started. And for a year or two, we had a gallery in the front, but we got rid of that for a while. And that was long before Camp Rehoboth owned any of this property. We did bring Lambda Rising in, as you can see. And it's not a good picture for this, but the rainbow fence that's down the side, it's white on the side you're seeing because it was private property on that side. And Mr. Cat still lived next door in what is now the Camp Rehoboth office. But this is, like the others, are like the previous one and the one to follow this, are kind of grainy and old, and they were taken from photographs. We didn't even have the negatives on them. So anyway, excuse me. All right. This was the first Camp Rehoboth office. And if you think about Laurie's Cafe now, it's not a big space. But at that time, those stores were divided into smaller units. So that first office was half of Laurie's Cafe. And so all the volunteers and people who were coming in, and letters was a part of this from the very beginning. So we had some folks working on letters in there, and we had brought in an executive director and people to work. So they were all working out of that that tiny little office. And the watering hole was also the precursor to what later became Laurie's Cafe, and some friends who had come with us when we moved to town had decided to move as well, and were opening, you know, this coffee place. And both of them were wonderful, talented young men who before 1995, both of them had died of AIDS. So we were, it was sort of the way things were at the time, you know, so many people. And up until 94, throughout those early years, we were losing people at way too fast a rate. I will say that those early years, the photographs are, there's not a lot from there. I think that we took some, but they're mostly old snapshots and sometimes dark. I do have a few others from those very beginning years, but they're hard to see. So anybody has any of those early 90s camp shots, they are just shots, it would be wonderful to see them. This is, they picked this photograph, and I think it's an important reminder of the importance of letters over the years. And also these copies of letters were from a much later year. I believe this picture was probably taken, it was taken in 2008. So these are not the original 2-page copies of letters that first went out with just a couple of ads in them, or not. But it was very important in those early years for us to have a communication tool. And you have to remember that there was no, you know, we didn't have phones in our pockets, and, you know, we really didn't even have computers much in our office, except for sort of word processing equipment and things in 1990. It kind of boggles my mind to think of how things changed and how rapidly they changed over all those years, and how it was a continual adjustment to our technology, and still is. But there was actually some debate in those early formative years of Camp Rehoboth about whether, you know, we should put effort into letters, or whether we should just be a more, you know, act up kind of organization, out, you know, being in your face. And so those were very conscious decisions that were made about the direction of Camp Rehoboth. Steve and I both felt that we should be, and that we should work within the community, that we should be building bridges and alliances, and you know, living side by side, neighbor to neighbor with people. That's how we felt like change could come. We also felt like very strongly that we needed a communication tool, and Steve had a journalism background. Mine, you know, I had art and graphics, and so both of us, you know, we dove into it along the way. And I'm glad we did, and it quickly became a tool that allowed us to pay some salary, you know, in those early years, because the advertising, you know, brought in revenue for Camp Rehoboth. You know, I don't know that I could define exactly why this shot was chosen, except that it is a particular time in the life of Camp Rehoboth, and it conveys the importance of the Camp Rehoboth courtyard always being a visible, welcoming, and opening place for, you know, anyone who wanted to come. You know, once we moved into the new building, it was all redesigned, but because of looking at this photograph, I can tell, and let me see if I have a year on it. It was, yeah, this was taken in 2006. So you can tell that we've moved into the main building of Camp Rehoboth now, because the rainbow fence is down, and we couldn't take that down until camp had begun the process to buy that building next door that houses us. So a portion of the fence was down. The back was, you know, puts it in a later year there. So I think it was obviously a social event, you know, in the camp courtyard, but it does show how lively it was during those days, and what a formative place it was for the organization. There are a number of graphic shots in here, because I was, I mean, I like this kind of shot myself, but you know, letters, being on deadline, which those of you around Camp Rehoboth cringe because they've heard, oh, we're on deadline for years, and which meant we couldn't, we were busy. And I'm sure if I could still see your faces, you would all be eye rolling and stuff at the moment. But, you know, there were quite a few times when just hours before it went to press in the middle of the night when Steve and I were working, that, you know, there'd be a hole in the issue and I needed a photograph to fill it. And, you know, and so I would just throw something together and shoot them. And sometimes things like this happen. And so they're in all of our photographs. But this was from our Love event. It didn't go on as long as Sundance, but it was a huge dance event and a much beloved event, I think, and brought a lot of joy. We had entertainments but mainly it was just a huge dance. And it also raised money for AIDS, for Camp Rehoboth, for Sussex County AIDS Committee, and so forth. But anyway, I think there are people in the community that still miss Love. This picture is here because you just have to have it. You know, it's Tony Burns is iconic in our community as photographic historian. He's donated all of his albums to Camp Rehoboth, and he's taken pictures of the social scene in Rehoboth for, you know, longer than I care to remember. And I dare say that more than one person has the memory of being somewhere out of of being somewhere on the street in another city and having Tony Burns come up and say, I've got a photograph for you. That might have been from months ago, but he knows exactly where it is. He's a great gift to the community. And he's taken hundreds of the camp shots that we've seen over the years. And then of course, Chris Riss, who was the MC of the Bachelor auction. And this was one of the, it's not the earliest ones here, but this one was 2007. The Bachelor auction now takes place at Aqua. And Chris, if you're still with us, Chris Beagle is the MC of that now. You know, I said there were graphic shots in here, but our black and white beach ball was it was the main event for the Founders Circle. All the people that chipped in to make Camp Rehoboth, to build the new building. And so this is one of the graphics that went with it one year. And I don't know why it was in with my photographs, but I shot it. And so it's a reminder of all of those events. They were art auctions. They recognized, you know, the contributions of so many people. And all the names of the people who gave to this campaign, of course, are embedded forever in the Founders Circle wall at Camp Rehoboth, the rainbow wall there. This was another graphic one that was chosen because we've done World AIDS Day since those early 90s as a candlelight walk and a gathering and a service of remembrance and hope. And in the process of doing all of those, you know, I would often construct the program around some kind of participatory thing. And so one year people were writing, as they spoke, they would write Stop AIDS on this sign. And I actually believe it's on a big piece of wood now. This photograph was taken a long time ago, but World AIDS Day continues to be an event that we do. This photograph really shows how Camp Rehoboth goes out and works in the community. And the Camp Rehoboth Women's Golf League raised money to help some community organizations and donated it to, well, they actually purchased the van you see in the background for Westside New Beginnings Children and Youth Program. And we all gathered here to celebrate that event. You've got some of the Golf League members in the back, and of course Steve's over there on the side, and I love the sign that says "Thank you, Camp Rehoboth and Golf Ladies." So we do have the golf ladies to thank for this. In later years, our volunteer on vacation team has worked as well with Westside and with other community organizations. this was the team liked this too, although it was a sketch I did for the beginning of a painting to be auctioned at Black and White Beach Ball. But I also, and I'm glad it's in here because we designed the House and Heart logo that we use today after we moved into the new building, or as we were moving into the new building and expanding to a full service community center. Because the vision was to be the heart of the community, and so that was our symbol. In this one, I was playing around with how that becomes a 3D image and how it unfolds to sort of reveal the idea that was at the heart of that philosophy, was that it was a house without walls, that it was a house without, a ceiling on it, and it was open to all. Anyway, it was just a rough sketch there. Let's see what's next here. Many of my photographs were done as cover shots over the years for letters. So this was in the middle of construction, and of course we have the staff out on the construction site. Steve up in the driver's seat, and Sharon Messina and Beth Fitton and Kathy Weir, who my early memories of Camp Rehoboth could never not include Kathy Weir. She was there behind the desk, and her presence and her spirit brought so much to Camp Rehoboth. She works at Browserbout now, and she's a librarian at heart, which is what made her so valuable to Steve and I, because she was wonderful at archiving things and so forth. But I know she's really happy working with books over there, because that's in her heart. And anyway, I always like this shot. Here we've got a shot that most people in the summertime would never see, but I like it because it shows an angle of the community center that unless you're all the way back in the courtyard, you don't really see. And over the years, many times I've had people say, "Wow, I didn't realize Camp Rehoboth was so big," or that there was that big room was back here. And there is something about that hushed quiet of winter, and then the color of the rainbow wall that's in there. I think that's why they chose this picture. But yes, I like the winter time here too. So there is probably no more memorable or exciting day for those of us who were involved in the early part of Camp Rehoboth than the day that Governor Jack Markell came to the Camp Rehoboth Community Center to sign SB 121 into law. SB 121 is the law that added sexual orientation to the state's non-discrimination law. There were many good things that happened after this point, the civil unions, marriage equality, and so forth, that were extremely exciting and changed our lives. But it took 11 years to get to this point. The fight was just, steady progress year after year after year. And of course, we've got Pete Schwarzkopf and Drew Fennell there in the background, and Steve. And there were so many people across the state who worked on this, who worked to make this happen. And it was just in that first few months after the new community center was finished. So it was almost an inaugural event, and it still stands in my memory as just one of the most exciting days at Camp Rehoboth. There was a huge crowd in the room, and so many people had come out, and it was a joyous, happy moment. This is, it was just a shot taken to the front of Camp Rehoboth at twilight, but it also reminded me that one of the original functions of Camp Rehoboth, and one of the reasons we wanted to be downtown, was to be visible, and to be a visible sign of welcome to people, and to, you know, provide a beacon of light to people who are looking for, you know, for help or for just a place to go and talk, or for services of some kind, or just a friendly face. And so I'm glad the sign has that light in it. I think that sign was grandfathered in, and I don't think you can do a lighted sign like this now. But that one's been around for a while, so we were just able to change the wording on it. Ooh, sorry. I know Faye is laughing right now, but the CAMP Rehoboth Follies existed for a number of years. They grew out of the beach house scene here in Rehoboth, and it was a skit competition. You know, it was funny, it was horrible, it was, there was no other event like, you know, quite like it. This was one of the skits, the end of the skit. And as you can see, the winners of the Golden Barbie, because they're in the center, they're holding that Barbie. We gave a gold and a bronze and a silver. And the days that this was put together was, you know, in my memory, it was one of the hardest days of ever, because it would begin at the crack of dawn at the convention center. We had our sound people, our light people. I was stage managing the shows, and each of the skits had 45 minutes to come in, rehearse, run through a tech rehearsal for us to get all the light and sound cues, and be ready for production that night. So one after the other they came, and some were more prepared than others. So it really was a sort of herding cats kind of thing up there, because fortunately I had some really dedicated stagehands up there on the stage, and they would get everybody in place. And you know, it eventually worked out, or it didn't. But yeah, at the end of the night, there would always be a winner of some kind or another. The next shot here is sort of sums up the camp in camp, and these characters, of course, Steve Elkins, Glenn Pruitt, and John Holtz, often did the CAMP Rehoboth skit, which did not compete, but would open the show. This is not actually the Follies. This was taken at one of the early, maybe the first CAMP Rehoboth chorus concert that was held down at Clear Space. But these costumes made their debut at the Follies, and Steve loved that outfit. You know, he would have worn it up and down the street if I let him. That and that pink tutu they wore sometimes. You know, he was well, all three of you, and Glenn, I think you're here too, but they're all showmen at heart. So we love seeing them in their Fruit of the Loom outfit here. This one was taken by, let's see here. It was taken by Barbara Proud. You may have seen her book, First Comes Love. And she had contacted Steve and I about doing a photo shoot for that book. And she photographed people from all over the country. But and those photographs are black and white, and this is not the one that's in the book. But when Leslie reached out to her, she was quite happy to share a photograph from that photo shoot for our project here. So this is the one she sent, and I'm glad she did, because it does sum up our early years, and I'm glad it's got the sign there. CAMP Rehoboth has had countless art exhibits over the years. We try to do them all the time. This one was one that photographer Leah Beach did in the back, one of the rare shows in the back room at camp, the big room. But it was a show on the drag queens, local drag queens. And So all of the pictures were from behind the scenes, people getting ready and so forth. Really fascinating photographs. But I think what people liked about this particular image and why they picked it is just the story going on in the foreground and how it contrasted with the back, with what the show was about. I mean, there's obviously something going on and there's communication here. And I think it was just a photograph that people liked. Another photograph that sort of captures Women's Fest here. And I will say that I have hundreds of photographs from Women's Fest. There's, like most of these, there's not many actual pictures from all of our events and things. We have one from Broad Walk on the Boardwalk, which is part of Women's Fest, coming up momentarily. But Women's Fest has done, extraordinary things, and it was founded out of the CAMP Rehoboth Women's Project, which all grew out of some events that happened as we were really beginning to move towards the idea of expanding to a full-service community center before the construction started, and in a conscious effort to increase our programming to the women's community. And now this past year was the 20th, I think, anniversary of Women's Fest, but it was canceled, and a huge sadness for the community, I know, because of the cancellation from coronavirus. And the Indigo Girls were coming, and it was just going to be the most exciting event that had ever happened. And Faye and all of you that worked on that, I know you were extremely disappointed, as was the community, but it's been a marvelous event over the years, and it's one of Camp Rehoboth's signature events now. 4 days in the spring and full of shows and performances and workshops and all kinds of things. So this is my favorite Women's Fest photograph. Actually, it's from the Sunday afternoon Broad Walk on the Boardwalk. So cancer raises funds for cancer and awareness for cancer survivors. It was a cold, and just the day was so windy that the participants were just about to blow away. But I love it that it captures that in this picture. You've got just that the look on everyone's faces, and Kathy especially, who's right there in the middle, who spearheaded this whole the whole Broad Walk project over the years and still does. I love that look on Kathy's face. It just sort of sums it all up for us. I also have hundreds of pictures from Camp Rehoboth Chorus. I've photographed it, from every angle, but the team loved this one, and I think it's only a portion of the chorus, which in total is around 90 members, and I believe it's still the largest chorus in the state of Delaware. But I'm sure it was the color that they liked in this picture. So it doesn't capture the whole chorus, but it does give us a little moment, in one of their concerts. And as I've always said, the chorus was, and still is, just tremendous ambassadors for Camp Rehoboth, because they do go out and, the ensemble from the chorus goes out to nursing homes and to other hospitals, wherever it's invited to perform. And the key thing about the chorus is that they love what they're doing. And Doug Yetter, who's their artistic director, does such a marvelous job of bringing the whole group together, and they have a fun time doing it. So we love the chorus. Skimming along the surface of camp events, the block party is a newer event, and kicked off during the 25th anniversary of Camp Rehoboth, and Chris Beagle was instrumental in really getting the block party started, and still continues to lead it. it was canceled last year because we were in the middle of a terrible, terrible storm that it couldn't happen. What happens with it this year remains to be seen, but this is standing in front of Camp Rehoboth and looking towards the convention center. So I'm in the middle of the block. I took a ladder out here to take this shot, but the crowd is equally big in the other direction. It's a wonderful event, and the days that when the weather cooperates, it's spectacular. So we all look forward to the day when we can be together again in large crowds. Another event that Chris has worked on so hard is the Sundance Racing Festival. It was added to the Sundance lineup. Sundance is always Labor Day weekend, and it's the Saturday and Sunday of Labor Day weekend at the Convention Center. This takes place a week before. It began as a 5K, and it's expanded to a full racing festival. There aren't many costumes in this picture, but we do encourage people to wear costumes, which is why the slogan over the years would say run, walk, and sashay. So it's I don't know that we've used those in a while, but it's also an anticipated event, and its fate for this year is also unknown at this point. So we're all looking to find out what's going to be happening with these things. And talking about Sundance, it's hard to capture, in one or two photographs what an event that's been going for 33 years is like. This one was of the stage at the auction, and it was taken the year the convention center was under construction, and we had to move out to the mall, which I still consider one of the great, a personal victory for me, because it took months of wrangling for me to get them the entire empty mall. It was before they built that post office part out there for us to use. And in the end, we had it for 2 years while the construction was going on. And they became, the mall owners who don't live here, or have a number of malls from other places, became big supporters and donated the entire use of the mall to us for 2 years. So it was an enormous space, and my team that worked on setting things up lost a lot of weight that year, because we walked, I think the day of the auction, I clocked like 20 miles or something, just walking from one end of the mall to the other and back and forth, and getting everything ready. It was fun. But the quilt you see there is has all the T-shirts from Camp Rehoboth over the years in it. Anyway, it was an exciting night, as they always are. This one was another shot from Sundance, but this was an earlier one. Let's see if I've got a date on this one. This one was 2009, back at the convention center, and then that was part of the dance. And then this next one is a recent one. It's from the early part of the evening last year, when Robbie Leslie was playing from. Robbie was one of the Studio 54 DJs, and has a program on Sirius XM on Studio 54. And it's a wildly popular night. I think most of you who are watching this have been there, but if you haven't, this is the view from the DJ and light booth looking, and there's a stage right there in front where those folks are dancing, but then it covers the entire length of the room. And then there are side stages where people are dancing, and another stage way down there. That huge mirror ball in the middle is in the middle of the convention center. So, there's a full crowd beneath the folks you see up here in the front. And that mirror ball is, by the way, a 48-inch mirror ball, and it makes me very happy when I see it. It's hard not to be excited by a 48-inch mirror ball to people who love to dance, I think. So it was a very exciting event, and as you can see, people are having a good time. This was it was part of a photo shoot for another cover shot. And in 2017, when the Women's March in Washington had just occurred. So that was our cover that year, was at that time period was having, a representative of that march in there. So that was from that photo shoot. And we're actually coming up here on the end. This one they picked, which is a familiar shot to all of you. It was a photograph taken by Kevin Fleming. And it was originally done for his book, The Beaches of Delaware, which just, chronicled all sorts of things. Had an article about Camp Rehoboth, and featured this photograph across the sort of a double spread of the pages. And then we used it when Steve passed away. If there's anyone here who doesn't know, that's Steve Elkins, of course, and my partner and husband and co-founder of Camp Rehoboth. It was taken in our apartment at the time, and I always liked it that he was holding this heart, because he always wore his heart on his sleeve. So, and the look on his face right here it's just one of the looks that I will always remember from Steve. So I think it was a shot that was, everybody just wanted to have in immediately. And I'm going to end with another shot, which of course is the sign, the walk sign that's out at the end of Baltimore Avenue, that everybody sees as they walk to Baltimore Avenue now. And the folks picking the shot, they asked me I had ones that had without the wires. There was just the blue sky, but I like this one. And I like it because of what it says about Camp Rehoboth, and that our goal was always to be a connector, to connect people and places and resources, and the communities, who fed Rehoboth from, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New York, to not necessarily create new things, except where we were called to do so, but to connect people who are already doing it, who are providing services, who could work with us to help make it a better community. And as I said at the dedication of this sign, though not in as much detail, I know that Steve is happy that he finally got his own way. So we still laugh about that these days. But that's the 30th. That's the 30 photographs chosen. Like I said, there are a lot more out there that were part of the larger group, and you'll continue to see those as they come up. And in total, they give a better historical view of what was going on at camp, probably. But like I said, this is just touching down here and there. So I'm going to come back to oops. Well, I'm not getting back to mine. There we go. All right. There we go. Marge.
Yeah, hi, Steve, thank you so much for everything. I do not see, I'm looking at the chat box, and there aren't any questions. There are people telling us, yes, we see the screen. Sal Seeley wants to know if that was me, I think. Yes, Sal, that's me. And Chris wanted to know, yes, Chris, I did record this. I recorded it on my PC, and then I'm going to convert it, and we will have it available on the museum website. If you're interested, personally in having a copy of it, I think we can arrange something like that too. Now I'm getting a few more new messages. Let's see what we have. Okay, can you see this, Murray, or should
Yeah.
I read them to you?
No, I can see.
Okay.
Let's see. Could you talk a little bit about the straight community in the early days? This is from Gordon Tanner. Gordon, where are you out there? Who supported Camp Rehoboth and who were some of the opponents? Yeah, I mean, the reason we got Camp Rehoboth started in the beginning was because there was a bit of tension, you know, in town as the gay community increased in size and visibility, and you have to remember that during the 80s, you know, there was the whole fight with the Strand, which was just across the street, in which you know, so suddenly lines of people were spilling out on the street. It was, you know, the town was trying to adjust to things, and there were opponents. There certainly were opponents, as we've talked about for years, who, you know, it's where the bumper sticker "Keep Rehoboth a Family Town" came from, which we probably should have in this presentation, you know, even though it was before we started Camp Rehoboth. But we did have it in the exhibit originally. Is it in the current exhibit, Marge? I don't know whether it is or not. Is it?
I'm not sure. I don't.
It was in the one. It was in the temporary one. But yeah, so there was opposition in the beginning, as there were in those days at all times. But you know, one of our biggest goals was, I mean, we realized that, I mean, Letters was out on the street. It was very important to us that Camp Rehoboth was a connector to all people, and that it was welcome to all people, and that we were working to build the community, to support the community, not just the LGBT community. And of course, we didn't even call it that in those days. It was, we would say the gay and lesbian community or something, and leaving out our other, I mean, not intentionally. I just think we were all aware enough in those days, in the early days. Now we might be too aware because there's so many initials that we can't remember what they are sometimes, but but the idea is correct, that, you know, that we want to honor all who are who need to be included, which really, in our viewpoint, was everyone. But yeah, so those first, I think that's, especially the first 10 years were, I mean, they were sort of touch and go. I mean, it wasn't that we knew what we were doing, or it wasn't and the city didn't always know what to do with us, and the gay community didn't always know what to do with us. And there were people who, you know, we were chastised a number of times by people who thought, oh, we were too out in the open, or we were doing this wrong, or we were doing that. And you know, so we tried to learn. We certainly made mistakes along the way, but, you know, we also had successes along the way. And, you know, as we began to make those connections, and, you know, again, some of it came out of all the AIDS work that was going on in those early years, you know, making the connections to the hospitals and to doctors and to things that were just beginning to get started then. We're very much a part of that time period. And our, you know, the support of the straight community has played a huge role over the years in our success, and in expanding the message, and in just being allies and part of the community. And so yes, I hope that answered your question, Gordon. Let's see what we've got here. So David, you're asking, what is the chorus name? That's the Camp Rehoboth chorus? Is that what you were talking about? Yeah, it's the Camp Rehoboth chorus, and there is a Camp Rehoboth chorus ensemble that's a part of that. Glenn's asking, is there a photograph or an image that you wished made the final cut but didn't? Oh yeah, there's several in there. I don't have them at my fingertips, but you know, when you've got to pick 30, you got to pick 30. So yeah, there are other photographs that I mean, there were a lot of photographs in there that, you know, meant a lot to me. But yeah, there's a yes to that. Linda's asking to consider a virtual Sundance Run Walk Sachet this year. That's, you know, that's quite a possibility. I think that, Chris, I think that you were at the convention, that you were with Sharon Lynn yesterday, and that
Yeah.
you just don't have an answer on that yet about.
We're actually considering moving it to Block Party weekend so that we have a better chance of hosting it as an outdoor event.
Yeah.
So we'll see. To be determined.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually thinking about this morning about how you would when I looked at that picture again, how you turn a race into a virtual event, but you have to be creative there. But
You run your 5K wherever you want. You just pay your admission fee.
yeah. Lots of thank yous here. What else do we have? A wonderful thank you.
Most of them are thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. But so others of you may have questions that or you may want to comment on something. Looking at the pictures jogged your memory about something that.
There was one that I sent to you this morning, I think, Murray, that somebody sent prior to the meeting.
Oh yes.
Do you remember what that was?
Asking about the things we've archived at camp, and I'd like to say that everything is like, people used to make fun of me because I would save too much stuff, but when they started calling me a hoarder, I probably ended up throwing away some things, papers and stuff that we would want someday. But there are records of board meetings and things like that, and we did have I don't remember the year, but we had a computer crash at one point in the earlier years, where we lost a chunk of some things that were all online. We used to call it the stroke, but there's just that little piece of missing information. But I don't remember the year of that. But almost, all the board records and things have certainly been kept.
There's another one here, Murray, that just came up. Will Camp Rehoboth Chorus consider making a CD in the future?
I'm sure they would love that idea. I can't answer one way or another, of course, what decisions they'll make, but Camp Rehoboth Chorus is very popular, and their concerts are sold out and loved by all. And let's see, they got in part of their concert this year, but then they had a second part that was scheduled for April, and it was canceled. That's right, Max, isn't it? You didn't, yeah. So yeah, it was. I don't know what decision we made about that. That would be wonderful.
Okay. And then Bill says he doesn't see the link to contribute to the museum. It should be at the very beginning. From me to everyone, feed the fish. And if you don't see it, you can always go to our website and just click the donate button. And I think I just said donut instead of donate. I don't know whether that's because I'm hungry or not, but if you don't see that, then just go to our website. And I want to thank all of you who helped me work through the beginning of this as the initial first Zoom meeting. I think it was very kind of everybody to come forward and help us through that. very beginning.
Yes,
Any
and
other questions?
I would, as in my capacity on the board of the museum, I would say yes, support it wherever you can. And, I will always ask you to support Camp Rehoboth.
Yep.
I'm not in the office anymore. As I've said earlier, I've moved over to my studio. And, my job these days, I'm still doing some letters work, and I'm working on Sundance, which is, the big issue of turning that into a virtual dance, because we are a virtual event, because we obviously can't put that density of people together this year. So we don't. The last thing we would want to do is endanger our friends and loved ones and become a breeding ground for coronavirus. So we're doing our best and learning a lot in the process, as we always did. And I've said that many times over the years, that the experience of growing a nonprofit organization from the grassroots up was the most educational experience of my life. And I learned more from this process and from all the people we work with than anything else in my life. So we're just fortunate to have the support we have and the community we have. And, I'm grateful for all of it. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for participating. Thank you, Leslie, for helping to put this together and making it possible.
Yes, and Leslie,
Thank you, Murray.
we hope sometime soon we'll still have the exhibit in the museum.
Yes, same here. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for coming. We hope you enjoyed it, and that you'll maybe come to some of the other conversations on history.
Thank you, Marge.
Thank you.